We are in the middle of summer and in the end of our series. And as I was going through these notes, I found myself guilty of so many things I've done. And my prayer is that you and I can come to terms with and to an agreement that we need fixed, right? We need to be fixed. We come to Christ because we're brokenhearted. And not only see the tendency is to think, well, I come to God because I need Him to fix something in my life. But for at least these next 30 minutes or so, let's come to Christ with the approach of not for Him to fix our circumstances, but to fix us. Because a lot of our trouble comes from within, right? The greatest battles that you're going to find are going to be fought within you. Yeah, the enemy is looking for you, is trying to hunt you, is trying to attack you, but the greatest victories or defeats come from within. Like the reason you give in to temptation is not because the temptation is so great, but because you were not ready for it. The reason you may tend to drift from God is not because the enemy forced you to do it. It's because you were not willing to reject the enemy, resist the devil, and run after God. So the battles are within us. So my prayer is that in this message today, at the end, we all can come to an agreement that we need to be fixed. And beyond that, that we know the one that can fix us. Isn't that good news? That the one who can save you actually wants to save you. That the one that wants to fix you actually wants to fix you. That the one that can see your issues, your struggles, is not intimidated by them, but rather compelled by them. And He wants to change your life for the better. And the sad thing is that we live in a culture that has progressively, and I say progressively, but the truth of the matter is that things have been bad for a really long time. Like sinful behavior has been there for a really long time. It's just magnified by our culture today because we have access to, a greater source of information with the internet, with your phone, with the TV, with cable. Sins can get magnified by those things, right? By technology. And what has happened is that, there are some sins that are really bad, really terrible, horrible sins, like murder. It's always unacceptable, right? Rape is always unacceptable, right? There are some things that we reject, that we despise. But there are some sins in our culture that we gradually have accepted as normal. And everybody's doing it, so I guess it's okay to do it. Well, I'm not as bad as so-and-so. And so we start labeling some sins as unacceptable, almost as if they were necessary, as if they were just part of life, and you can get rid of them. And since I'm wrapping up this series, I just want us to read a simple passage of Scripture and kind of like turn it into a prayer. And I want you to read it with me. This is found in Psalm 139, verse 23. Are we ready? It says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart." All right, let's try again, because you're like, guys, it's 11 a.m. service, so you should be already. Let's do it, okay? "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts." Verse 24, "Point out in me anything that offends you." Okay, let's do it again, because I messed up. Verse 24, "Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life." Now, if you feel uncomfortable by opening up your heart, you better wait to what I have to say today, because you're going to be feeling pretty uncomfortable here a little bit. But in a good way. In a good way. Our hearts are open now. We're asking God to come and search deep, right? Search deep, search deep, search deep. We're willing. Lord, you are the master surgeon. I want you to fix my heart. Now, going back a little into this series, we started with throwing shade. What is throwing shade? It's just a subtle way of disrespecting or ridiculing someone, either verbally or non-verbally. Like you can throw shade at somebody by your actions or by your words. And it's almost like being just a hater, like never being happy about someone else's success or being happy about someone else's failure, right? And we like to like just kind of like throw those little comments and say those things, and we saw that Paul exhorts us. In fact, we're going to see it a little bit later, that exhorts us to not let any unwholesome talk come out of our mouths, but only what edifies others, only what is helpful to others and those around us. And so we kind of in the next 2 weeks we kind of drifted from the specificity of words. Oh man, I said specificity. You see that? And we try to, instead of looking at just the problem, trying to find out the root of the problem. So we said, well, not only you have to realize who you are fighting for when you speak, but really the reality of the things is that as Christians, we are called to be holy, right? And we said, well, there is a separation or a gap between where we are and where we should be, right? You remember closing the gap? God is calling us to follow after Him, and He came as close as He could, but now He's calling us to follow Him. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was thinking, well, you probably have seen this picture of those footprints on the sand, right? And that the prayer that, well, I was walking on the beach and I just saw 2 footsteps and God, why did you leave me? And then we have this illusion of, well, son, it's not that I left you alone, it's that I was carrying you. And it sounds beautiful, okay? It sounds great, but I tend to believe that He's not always going to carry you. He says, follow me. He doesn't say, hop on, I'll carry you. Right? And so we expect God to fix all things when in reality He's saying, follow me. So He takes a few steps, I must take a few steps forward, right? You have to close the gap because He's calling you to be like Him. And you're never going to be completely like Him until that day when He returns and we go with Him to heaven. But as we get to that day, your job and my job is to close that gap between where He found me and where He's calling me to go. And the reality is that we all want better things, right? We all want better everything. That's what we kind of said on the third message of the series. Something better. We fight for better. We long for better. We wake up because we want better. We fight back because we want better. We fall and we get up once again because we want better, right? But what if I told you that God also wants you to experience the best of the best? He wants better for you. He created you for better. Our problem is that sometimes we take too long to realize that His better is better than our better. And so I want His better for me. I want His plans to be manifested in my life. And the only way for me to experience the fullness of His plans and His desires for my life is by surrendering to Him, wanting His better for my life. Well, today we're kind of like going full circle. We're coming back to where we started. We're going back to the topic, to the central topic. In fact, let me just encourage you to do something. Like touch the person next to you or in front of you or behind you. Or look at somebody and say, hey, this message is for you. Now, the problem is that it's for you too, right? And now let me give you some advice before we get to it. If you have any good shade to throw at somebody, you have about 12 seconds. If you have any juicy gossip to tell about someone, you have 12 seconds to spread it out right now. Because after this, my prayer is that you will never gossip again. So that's right. We're talking today about, you ready? Gossip. Now, a word of advice. If you don't agree with what I have to share today or the scriptures that I have and all that, you can gossip about it later. That's fine. Hopefully you won't. How many of you have ever been gossiped about? In my world, it happens all the time. You know, you go to a meeting and, hey, have you heard about Pastor so-and-so? You know when it happens the most? When, believe me, God is working in my life. And I want to be more like Him. So this message spoke to me as much as it's going to speak to you. But you get this, oh, well, this pastor so-and-so, oh, in that church so-and-so, oh, in this place, oh, and we start spreading out gossip, right? One of the funniest things is when someone tries to spread gossip about someone I really love and I really care for, and then I stop them, right? Or they stop me. Either way, it goes both ways. You know those comments that begin with, well, let me tell you what I heard. Like, I'm not sure, but this is what I heard. But please don't tell anyone, right? Or when we say, well, I heard that. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm just letting you know so we can pray. But what is gossip exactly? Well, one of the most practical definitions that I found, because I searched for several, is one by Rick Warren, and he says this about gossip. He says, when we are talking about a situation with somebody who's neither part of the problem or part of the solution, then we are probably gossiping. Let that sink in. If I'm not stepping on some toes right now, I will by the end. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it hurt me, and it's going to hurt some of you. Because the truth is that some of us need to change some behaviors, fix some behaviors, allow God to shape us more into His image. And part of that is to get rid of this tendency to gossip. It's an interesting perspective, right? When we're talking about a situation with somebody who's neither part of the problem or part of the solution, there we're probably gossiping. When we're talking about something with someone who is neither part of the problem or the solution, we're probably gossiping. For some of us, that might be that, man, we really don't have much to talk about anymore. Proverbs 6:16 says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to Him. And then skip to verse 19. It says, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. There are many sins, right? I mean, you can turn on the TV and watch a show on prime time with an abundance of sinful behavior in it. Yet Scripture defines or gives us a list of 7 things that God hates. Such a strong word. And on that list, guess what makes it in the top 7? Gossip. Like, God hates gossip. Why would gossip make it into this list? Why would it make God so angry that He puts it and narrows it down to a top 7 list of sins, and He includes gossip in it? What is it that makes Him so angry at gossip? Well, I have 2 possible options. As a pastor, I know some people talk about me. You've probably done it. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. Relax, okay? We're family. But you can say whatever you want about me. It may bother me a little bit. You may say something on social media about me. That's fine. It takes a lot for me to be offended, really. But you mess with one of my children. That's a different story. You talk about one of my children, that's a different story. That stirs me up. That fires me up. Could it be that maybe God is bothered by sin at so much great level because every time we talk about somebody, we're talking about one of His children? You think about it. Every time we talk about someone else in a negative light, we are actually talking about who? One of God's children. That could be the reason why it's so offensive to Him. Now here's the thing. Even though it is so sickening, so sickening and so horrendous to get entangled in gossip, even though it can be so hurtful, because we know that it ends up hurting people many times, disrupting relationships and creating chaos and creating divisions and dividing churches and dividing institutions and dividing families because of gossip. Even though it is so despicable, why is it that gossip is so attractive at the same time? Isn't it? I mean, most of the shows that make the big bucks on TV are about gossiping about someone. And how do they become successful? Because people like gossip. You want to know. You want to know what they say, who they say, what they wore, what they use, who they cheated on, and all that kind of, misinformation. And gossip makes money, right? And gossip feels good and it's tasty. And especially if it's a good, juicy gossip, right? Y'all are looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about when you know exactly what I'm talking about. Proverbs 18:8 says, rumors are dainty morsels that sink deep into one's heart. They're like a tasty bite. It's like something that's really, really good. Norma and I have been married for 15 years, and one of the things that I love about her is that he doesn't share her meal when we go out and eat at a restaurant. And this is not gossip, this is just information, but I'm trying to make a point out of it, okay? Only if she's full and she doesn't want any more, then I can get a bite. But so we went out to eat to this place, and that particular day I was craving something different, so she got a good, tasty cheeseburger, and I love cheeseburgers. And she had one last bite, like it was this size. But when she had the big hamburger, I was like, oh man, I would die for just one bite. I don't want the whole thing. I'm eating what I wanted, but I want a bite. But I know that if I ask her for a bite, she's not going to give me a bite. So I just kept paying attention if she would finish it all, and she didn't. And she was going to just let the server take it. I was like, let me have that. Oh my gosh, it was so good. It was just one bite. That's what gossip tastes like. Gossip is tasty. Don't tell me it's not. But what is the root of it? Well, I found some of the answers that people gave when they were asked what they gossip. Now, here's what they said, okay? This is what people say. And their answers may look very similar to what you and I would answer about gossip. First one, well, gossip, honestly, if I'm sharing gossip, it makes me feel kind of important. I've got the power in the situation, and all of a sudden, I feel elevated. Another person said, when I'm hearing gossip, it makes me feel better about myself. I mean, there's something great when someone else looks bad, and it makes me feel good about myself. Isn't that the truth? Another one, honestly, I think I've got such a boring and dull life. Hearing something juicy on someone else, it's like entertaining to me. Now, you pick your own answer. You probably have a better answer or a different answer, but in the end, it all points to the same place. The bottom line is, as I hear every reason and as I look at my very own reasons as to why I have gossip and I have been part of gossip, I couldn't find a single good reason to participate in gossip. Like nothing good comes out of it. There's no good end result of gossiping. None. Nothing. Nada. Every reason that you could come up with as to why you gossiped or have gossiped or like to gossip or enjoy gossip is just a reflection of the darkness of the heart. The other reason could be not only because God loves his children, but because it's a reflection of the darkness and sinfulness of the human heart. And last time I checked, God came to save the lost. God came to save sinners. God came to redeem us and then call us to a new and higher standard. So if why do you and I gossip? Why do we like it so much? There's not a single good reason. Can we agree on that? Just because everybody is doing it doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean that it is pleasing to God. And as followers of Jesus, we believe that God is calling us to live higher than the culture and to live according to his word. And even though everybody else does something, we want to live in a way that is pleasing to him. I want God to be pleased with my life. Don't you? I want the creator of all things to be pleased with my life. It's so easy to get stirred up, especially nowadays with social media. Like if you don't like what someone said, don't try to fight back on social media. Just hide them. You will never know about it anymore. So here's what we want to know. How do we overcome gossip? Because it's so ingrained in our culture, right? At work, at school. Could you believe that at churches sometimes gossip happens? So I want to break it down in 3 questions. And some may sound repetitive in this series, but I'm confident that these questions will serve as a filter and will provide you with a filter to evaluate your conversations. Anywhere, all the time. I'm telling you, this series has been challenging for me. I've had to stop people. I have to refrain myself. I had to change my way of thinking. I didn't realize how much I got used to some things that I've been doing wrong. And don't look at me funny. I'm human. And my prayer is that God can speak to us and make us more like Him, because we want to reflect His glory everywhere we go. Amen? And so here's the first question. Is this conversation helpful or hurtful? Like, is this what we're talking about? Is it helping or is it hurting? If it's not helping, it doesn't mean that it's hurting. But if it's not helping, it's not useful. Ephesians 4:29 says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Proverbs 16:27, scoundrels create trouble. Their words are destructive blaze. Proverbs 16:28, a perverse person stirs up conflict, and gossip separates close friends. I want to be part of the solution, not of the problem. When voicing out your opinion is good, a lot of times, but not all the times. Speaking up is good sometimes, but not all the times. Is my conversation helpful or hurtful? Now, we must be very honest, especially with social media, right? We can get entangled in conversations with people that we don't even know. And we stir it up and we get angry and we get mad, and some things come out of our hearts that we didn't even know that they were there. But it's so easy to hide behind a screen, right? Is my conversation helpful or hurtful? Now, we must be very honest with ourselves. I had to confront myself. I had to come to realize that sometimes I make gossip sandwiches in my conversations. You know what a gossip sandwich is? You throw a compliment, something. Oh, they're so awesome, and they're, but man, I love them. Like, this is wonderful people. Sandwich, right? Gossip is there. You've done that too. You just didn't know that it had a name. Compliment, gossip, compliment. Don't even get me started with prayer meetings. I think we need to pray for so. I mean, did you hear what? I think they really need to. But who am I to? So why don't we just pray? Let's just keep it in this circle. And an hour of prayer turns out in 50 minutes of gossip and 5 minutes of prayer. Is my conversation being helpful or hurtful? I know what you're thinking, but what if it's true? If it's true, it's fair game, right? If it's true, I can say it because it's true, right? And Scripture calls us to speak truth. Yes, in the right context, with the right people, at the right time, for the right reasons. Everything you say must be true. That is a fact, but everything that's true does not need to be said. Some truths are for you to keep them to yourself. If it's not helping, even if it's true, it's not helping. It's gossip. So the second question we must ask is, am I making private matters public? Am I making something that should have been kept in confidence public? Let me tell you, God has moved in mighty ways when we have been keeping things in confidence sometimes, but also the enemy has done great work when we get things out of the circle of confidence. Many times relationships have been broken. Proverbs 11:12 says, "It is foolish to belittle one's neighbor. A sensible person keeps quiet." A gossip goes around telling secrets, but those who are trustworthy can keep a confidence. Gossip can destroy people's lives. Trustworthiness can allow God to manifest himself. Am I making private matters public? Relationships have been broken, like I said, because of this. I was reading in one of the commentators' book. They were sharing a story about this couple that went through a tough season where there was unfaithfulness, and both repented. They came and they came to the leaders of the church, and they started pouring into their lives, counseling, ministry, and they kept it, in a small circle, and then they threw them in a kind of like a cell group, a home group. And they said, well, let's just love on them, but let's keep things in confidence, okay? Let's let them heal. And then suddenly someone had the brilliant idea of sharing that story out of that circle. Came back, and they were hurt because they realized that they couldn't trust, and they lost trust, and they ended up drifting from the church and drifting from each other. And as I said, in our social media culture, it is now easier and easier to slander anybody online, isn't it? I mean, you can tell them whatever you want. You can slander people however you want. You would never pick up the phone and call your 1,000 friends that you have on Facebook that you don't even know, but they're your friends. You would never pick up the phone and call them and tell them, did you hear what so-and-so? And did you hear what so-and-so? And you wouldn't do it, 1,000 times? But you don't have to anymore. You just have to type a few words, press enter, and ask for opinion. And I'm telling you, you post something that is along the lines of gossip, you'll get more likes and shares than if you don't. And sometimes we're just wanting the attention. Am I making private matters public? And I'm not going to be part of this, and I hope that this is your prayer too. I'm not going to be part of this kind of gossip for two reasons. One is because I want to protect others. It says that it can separate good friends, close friends. Gossip can separate relationships, can break homes, can break families, can break churches. I'm not going to be part of it because I want to help others. I want to see people the way God sees people. He died for the whole world. And if we're in this series trying to close the gap to be more like Jesus, we should love people the way God loved people. Yes, there are bad things happening. I know that some things in our world are messed up. Some people are drifting away from Jesus. But how are we going to reach them if we don't show them any love? I'm not saying love without truth. I'm saying truth in love. But sometimes we engage in conversations that are not getting us anywhere. They're not helping anybody. They're just creating more chaos and noise. And they do nothing to help anybody. In fact, sometimes they hurt those that we're trying to help. And the ones that we think we're trying to help, they don't even know that we're caring that much about them. And the second reason that I'm not going to be part of this, quite honestly, is because I also want to protect myself. I want to be a trustworthy person. As a pastor, sometimes I get to hear stories. I get to hear testimonies. And I want to be a trustworthy person. Sometimes it's so exciting to see what God is doing and how God is working in your lives. And sometimes I just have to keep those things to myself and see God finish the work. I want to protect my reputation that I am a trustworthy person who can keep confidence. Proverbs 25:9 says, when arguing with your neighbor, don't betray another person's secret. Verse 10, because others may accuse you of gossip, and you will never gain your good reputation. It's hard to trust someone that has betrayed you again, isn't it? And so, is my conversation helpful or hurtful? Am I making private matters public? If you're not feeling uncomfortable yet, I'm coming for you. Well, you probably will feel uncomfortable. That's my prayer, in a good way, in a way that you will be opened up so that God can do and finish and continue to do the work in you. By the way, we're in this together. I felt as uncomfortable as you, knowing that I had to share this today. In fact, you know it, the first message I told you, this was the hardest series, the hardest message that I've ever had to share, because it hit home. We're fighting for God's kingdom, bottom line, right? We want better. We want to close the gap. We want to create a culture of trustworthiness, of caring, of loving community, where we care for one another. When an outsider comes with that tendency, they hit a wall and they know that gossip doesn't happen in this place. Third question. This is the most uncomfortable one. Am I permitting others to gossip? Because you may say, well, I never say much, but you like to hear much. Proverbs 17:4 says, wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. Liars pay close attention to slander. Well, what am I going to do? Then I won't have any conversation with anybody, right? At this point, I can talk, I can hear, and everybody's talking bad things about other people. What can I do? It's not only wrong to speak the gossip, it is also wrong to listen to the gossip. Why? Because what you permit, you promote. What you allow is that what you're promoting. Take that on your toes. If you listen to it, you are promoting it. If you listen to it, you are participating. If you are listening to it, you're actually facilitating it. You are creating a space where gossip can happen. And you know how God feels about gossip? He hates it. Wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. So if someone says, hey, I've got to tell you this on, you're going to love, did you hear? Hey, did they come with that kind of comment? If you're permitting it, you're promoting it. But you can say, hey, I'm sorry we're not going there. I'm not going to allow you to do that. Like, I don't care. I don't need to know. Now, if you're smart about this is very practical. If they will gossip to you, you know what else they will do? They will gossip about you. And so we're not going to hang out around that kind of behavior. So stop them, okay? Stop them. Now, some of you are very soft-hearted and you don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. You want to keep loving, and I get the loving, but some people, you just have to get them out of your life in love, with the love of the Lord, because they're hurting you. They're hurting other people. So maybe you want to approach this in a subtle way. Someone comes, starts talking, you can be very subtle. You can say, I'm not feeling very comfortable with this conversation, right? Subtle. You can say, I'm not feeling comfortable with this conversation. Now, if you're really caring, you can say, hey, if so-and-so was or knew that we were talking about them, they would be hurt, and I don't want to hurt them. So let's just... Now, if you want to be biblical, if you have a problem, maybe you should go directly to them. That's the biblical approach. Now, if you want to be direct, and this is my favorite one, you can say, hey, listen, if you keep talking about others, I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. You can talk good about people all day long. Have at it. Say good things, bless them, praise them. Say good things about people. Highlight the good things about people. Love them the way God loves them. I'm working in my own life and creating rules and filters for my own personal journey. So for example, I made up my mind and I am still working on it, okay? That I will not talk about someone who is not in the room unless it's something positive and it's something that I would say if such person was in the room. Positive, and if the person would be in the room when I say those things. Now, when trying to help someone, because sometimes people need interventions, right? They're drifting away and we really love them, but sometimes we talk so much about their problem, but never talk about them. We never talk with them about the problem, and we never help them. We know all the things that they should do, but we never tell them what they should do. We know all the things that they shouldn't do, but we never tell them what they shouldn't do. And we just pat them on the back and just ignoring them come and the other way around and gossip about them. That doesn't help. So if you're trying to help someone, everyone involved should be in the room, in the conversation, present, and then have at it. Listen, your words matter. The words you speak are incredibly important and powerful. Jesus said this, and I'll tell you this, you must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. Verse 37, the words you say will either acquit you or condemn you. For some of you, that might be a long meeting, right? For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. Your words matter. What I need to understand is that my words have the power of life and of death. And every time I'm speaking, if you catch me speaking of someone else, I want to be caught speaking well. I want to be caught saying things that are helpful and never hurtful. I want to be caught believing the best about other people and never assuming the worst. I want to be a person who is part of the solution in building others up and never part of the problem, tearing them down. I want my words to be seasoned with salt, full of love, lifting people towards the things of God and always believing the best. I want my words to be helpful and kind and encouraging and full of blessing and never full of curses, because my words are powerful. And ultimately, you and I, we reflect a God who is a speaking God, right? We are the manifestation of Jesus Christ in our days. We are speaking for God in our days. When God created earth, what did He do? He spoke. Because in His words are life and creation. And to summarize what Christianity is, it's called the gospel, which, if you know what the gospel means, it means good news. So rather than being a conduit for bad news and death and pain and destruction, I want to be a vessel for God, for good news, sharing the truth and the grace of what God can do in the lives of those around us. Would you stand up with me?